You can spot them in any room if you know what you're looking for. They're the ones who never ask for help. The friend who shows up for everyone else's crisis but disappears when they're struggling. The coworker who's handling 5 projects at once and still says "I'm fine" when you ask how they're doing. They seem impossibly capable, mature beyond their years, until you realize they're not mature, they're exhausted. These are the people who raise themselves, and their psychology is one of the most invisible forms of trauma walking around today. Psychologists call it parentification. It's when the roles between parent and child reverse. When you're 8 years old making dinner for your siblings. When you're 10 and your mom is crying on your shoulder about her marriage. When you're 12 and managing the household bills because dad's drinking again. You didn't volunteer for this. You just did what needed to be done because no one else was going to. And here's what nobody tells you. That child is still inside you, still believing that your needs don't matter, still convinced that asking for help is admitting defeat, still carrying the weight of everyone else's world while your own crumbles in silence. Picture this. You're 9 years old and your mom has one of her bad days. She stays in bed, doesn't speak, so you get your younger siblings ready for school. You make them breakfast, probably cereal because that's all you can manage. You check their homework, walk them to the bus stop, come home to a silent house, and do it all again tomorrow. Teachers call you mature for your age. Other parents say you're so responsible. They have no idea you're drowning. According to research published in studies on childhood trauma, as many as 67% of children experience some form of parentification. That's 2 out of every 3 kids forced to be adults before they even understand what childhood is supposed to feel like. And the thing is, you didn't get a choice. Parentified children aren't given a role. They absorb one out of necessity. When your parent is emotionally unavailable, struggling with mental illness, dealing with addiction, or just checked out, someone has to hold things together. That someone becomes you. You learn to read the room before you can read chapter books. You become hypervigilant, watching for signs. Is mom okay today? Is dad going to blow up over nothing? Will there be food in the fridge, or do I need to figure that out? Your nervous system is in constant survival mode, and that doesn't just go away when you turn 18. Here's the paradox. People who raise themselves often become incredibly capable adults. They're the managers everyone wants on their team, the friends who always know what to say, the ones who can handle crisis without falling apart. But capability isn't the same as health, and this is where it gets complicated. Because parentified children do develop real strengths. Research shows they often have higher empathy, better crisis management skills, stronger work ethic. They can read people like nobody else because they had to. Their survival depended on anticipating needs and managing emotions that weren't even theirs. One woman who spoke to therapists about her experience said she was praised constantly as a child for being mature, for taking care of her siblings, for being her mother's emotional support. She said, "I thought I was lucky. I thought I was special. It took me 30 years to realize I was robbed." That's the thing about parentification. It doesn't always look like abuse from the outside. Sometimes it looks like a responsible kid helping out. But there's a difference between age-appropriate chores and being your parent's therapist at 11, between babysitting occasionally and raising your siblings full-time while your parent is physically there but emotionally gone. Fast forward 20 years. You're an adult now, successful maybe, capable, definitely, and completely burnt out in ways you can't explain to anyone. According to Psychology Today, adults who were parentified as children struggle with specific patterns. You can't say no. Every request feels like an obligation you can't refuse. You overfunction in relationships, at work, in friendships. You're everyone's rock and nobody knows you're crumbling. You feel guilty for resting, guilty for spending money on yourself, guilty for having needs at all. Because somewhere deep in your nervous system, a child learned that their value came from what they could do for others, not from who they were. Relationships are complicated. You're drawn to people who need you, who are struggling, who you can fix, because that's the only kind of love that feels familiar. Mutual support feels foreign, uncomfortable, like you're taking something you don't deserve. And asking for help? Forget it. Even when you're drowning, you'd rather go under than reach for a hand, because you learned early that no one was coming to save you. So you became someone who doesn't need saving. Except you do. You're just too well trained to admit it. Here's what therapists say is the hardest part of healing from parentification. The grief, the rage, because you love your parents, even the ones who failed you, and admitting they failed you feels like betrayal. You make excuses. They were doing their best. They had their own trauma. They didn't know better. And maybe all of that is true, but it doesn't change what happened to you. It doesn't give you back the childhood you deserved, the one where you got to be a kid, where your biggest worry was homework, not whether your family would fall apart. Research on parentification shows that acknowledgement is the first step to healing. Naming it, saying out loud, "I was a child who had to be an adult. That wasn't fair. That wasn't my job. And it cost me something I can never get back." If you see yourself in this, here's what you need to know. Your needs matter. They always did. You weren't selfish for having them. You were a child who deserved care. Healing from parentification means learning to prioritize yourself without guilt. It means setting boundaries. It means understanding that rest isn't laziness and asking for help isn't weakness. It means building relationships where you're valued for who you are, not what you can do. And it means grieving the childhood you should have had, the parent who should have protected you, the innocence that was stolen too early. That grief is real, and it's valid. Even if everything turned out okay, even if you're successful now, even if your parent did their best, you can love someone and still be angry at what they took from you. Both things can be true. People who raise themselves carry an invisible weight. They're strong because they had to be, capable because they had no choice, independent because dependence was never an option. But strength built on necessity is still trauma, and you deserve more than just surviving. You deserve to be cared for, to rest, to need people without shame. If this hit home, you're not alone. This channel is for the ones carrying what no one else can see. Subscribe to keep exploring the psychology that shapes who we are. And if you recognize yourself here, drop a comment. Your story matters. Someone else needs to hear it. Because the first step to healing is knowing you're not the only one who had to grow up too soon.